Hello and welcome to the session. So let's continue our journey for core Java concepts on hands-on practice. So before starting, just introduction to the primitive and non-primitive data types. So this is how you declare and print the different types of variables. Now remember, for float, you should add F character at the end because that is how it differentiates between float and double. Similarly for character, so of course you can initialize it with a character in single quote, but you can also assign it a value, and this will be considered as ASCII value. So it will be, so 65 is basically character A capital and so on. So let me just run this. Yes, so apart from all other types of variables, if you see character 65 is equivalent to character capital A. Now, similarly for non-primitive data types, we will see the string and arrays in detail in the upcoming sessions. But this is how you declare and initialize and assign values to non-primitive data types. So this is how you access the individual element of the array. Now coming to a little older topic. So if you see this variable age and variable name is not initialized here. So if you see, as I was discussing earlier, we should assign, we should initialize the variable with a sensible default value. But what if we do not initialize? So this program will still compile and this will still run. Let me just show you. Okay, so it has run, it has compiled, but if you see, uh, so this is not a good practice. If you see, if I start using the variable uh, age, or if I start using the variable name, if you see, it will be shown as red. So what is the error here? So basically this program will not compile, it will say variable might not have been initialized. Okay, so your program will not even compile itself. So it is a better practice to initialize a variable as soon as you declare with a sensible default value. Now let us see the next topic, operators. So there are a couple of interesting operators to discuss. So unary operators are basically, they will operate and they will increment or decrement the value of a variable by one. And obviously we have a multiplicative operator. So this is a modulo operator. We will see this in detail. Additional, additive, relational, equality, are kind of simple. Assignment operators are kind of extension of this unary operators. We will see that, and of course the Boolean and conditional operators. So let's see some demo. So you see this unary operator. So what happens is, typically in for loop condition, we want to increment the value of a variable by 1. So instead of saying c equal to c plus 1, we can say c plus plus, or minus minus c, plus plus c, or c plus plus. So when you apply this operator before the variable, it is called as a prefix operator. So what does it mean? It means that the value of c will be incremented first and then it will be utilized. So in this example, the value of c will be 9. Value will be incremented by 1 and then it will be utilized. So it will be 10. So it will be decremented by 1 and utilized. So 9 again. Now if you see this d equal to 57. So if I say minus minus d, this time what happens is, when it's a prefix operator, because the minus minus sign is before the variable. So d value will be decremented first and then it will be used in this particular statement. So it will print 56 and the value of d at the end of this statement will be still 56. Now just a tricky question. So if the value of d is 0 and if I say minus minus d, it's a question for you what it will print. So similarly, let us see the postfix operator. So just an example here, say a equal to 15 and I print a, uh, it will print 15. Now when I say a plus plus, so in this case it is just one statement in this line. So a value will be incremented by 1 and it will be referred. So at the end of this line, the value of a is 16. So same will be printed here, again decremented, so it will be 15 again. So 15, 16, 15. Now let us see this d. So b value is 5. Now when I say b plus plus, so unlike the prefix operator, what happens in postfix operator is the value of the variable will be referred first and then it will be utilized in the program. So when I print this statement, the current value of b will be 5 only, and it will print the outline as 5, and at the end of this line the value of b will be 6. So in the next line, if you print system out println b, then it will print 6 because it was incremented by 1. Okay, so this is about unary operator. Modulo operator. So modulo operator is basically will give you the remainder of that particular division, and it is using the percentile symbol. So when I say 9 percentile 4, so the output will be 1, because 9 divided by 4 it will be 2, and the remainder will be 1. So modulo operator will give you the remainder of the operation. Now on the same line, an interesting question. So let's say if 9 percentile minus 4. So it's a tricky question. So I leave it to up to you. What will be the output of 9 percentile minus 4? So try this out and check it out. Now assignment operator, as I said, this is kind of extension of the unary operator. So let's say in some of the examples, in some of the situation, you want to increment the value of a variable by, let's say, more than 1, or decrement by more than 1. So let's say you want to increment by 3. So how do you write it? So h equal to 55, and you say h plus equal to 3. That means h value will be incremented by 3. Similarly, h minus equal to 4, h percentile h into equal to 2, and so on. So this will print 57, this will print 54, and 54 into 2, that will be 108, and so on. Boolean operator. So what happens is when you do using Boolean, so you use ampersand or uh, uh, pipe symbol. That is only once you use it, it becomes a binary operation. So those two variables will be converted to binary. So if you see here, j is 8, 8 means 1 0 0 0, and k is 0. So binary 1 0 0 and 0 0 0, binary and will be all 0, and j or k. So 8, so 1000 or 0000 will be 8 only. It will be 1000 only. So that is how the binary operators will be utilized. Now let us see conditional operators. This is basically a logical, basically two condition matching or two condition using and or operator. So you can use double and double ampersand or double pipe characters. So one simple example here. So if condition 1 is true and condition 2 is true, and this is basically used in if control statement. So if both the conditions and using and, if both are true, then it will go inside the for loop. So in this case, if you see both the conditions are matching, so it will go inside the for loop and it will print this statement. Now second statement also, if you see, there is a or logical or conditional or condition here. So what happens is if the first condition is true, that means it is this condition is true. And if you have an or operator, so what happens is if first condition is true, that means one or or you can say true or whatever. So if one is true, then the compiler or the runner or the JVM will not even execute this remaining statement. It will simply go inside this for loop and it will print the statement. So let's just run it. Right, so it has printed both the statements and all about the conditional and logical operators. Yeah, assignment operator, modular operator. So 9 percentile 4 is basically 1. Okay, and this you can figure it out. What will be, it can be a tricky question in the interview also. Right, so one of the interview question can be, what is this operator? Greater than, or less than, less than. So I leave it to you to find it out. What is this operator and why it is used. One clue I can give you, it is related to binary operations. Okay, so let's see the topic as arrays. So what is an array? As we have seen earlier also, it is a collection of similar data type. So let's say you want to store the marks of your exam, or if you want to store the names of the cities in your country and so on. So those are the similar data types, either integer or character or some strings or float numbers or any kind of a similar data type. So obviously when you put a make a collection, then collection will have a length, and we will see what is dimension. So we have one dimensional array, we have two dimensional array, etc. So how to declare, initialize, access elements of the array and modify the elements of the array. So let's see a demo here. So this is one way to declare and initialize the array. If you see here, left hand side is the declaration and right hand side is the initialization. So left hand side you say the type of the array and you put the square brackets and you give the name of the array. So left hand side is the declaration and right hand side you are assigning some values to it, or you know it's a kind of a definition. Now here you are just declaring the array, but what are the contents of the array, that is not initialized. So this is no explicit values definition. Now in this case, second case is with explicit values. So if you see, left hand side is another standard declaration and right hand side is the actual value, or you can say initialization. So in this case, this is an array of integer where there are a couple of numbers here. So obviously these are four numbers. So there are four elements in the array. So this is how you access individual elements. Remember, if you just put system.println the name of the array, it will give you the address of the array. If you want to get the content, you have to access it with the index. So what is an index? So there are four elements here. So first element, second element, third element, and fourth element. But the index always starts with 0. So exam marks 0 will be 78, exam marks 1 will be 98, and so on. Remember, the index cannot be negative, and index, if you see in the example, if you say index of -1, so this will give you an error. Runtime, it will give an error. Now what about this statement, index 44? So if you see, there are only four elements here, and more than four elements do not exist. So that is also an error statement. So it will compile, but it will give you an exception when you are running the program, or basically an error. So what is an exception? That also we'll see in the upcoming sessions. So in this example, this is a string array and it is initialized with a couple of strings here. So similar things here. So this will give you the address of the array, this will give you the individual elements of the array, and so on. Now how do you modify? You just assign it a different value. This is how you assign or change the content of the array element, and so on. Now this is a for loop. This will print the elements one by one. What is for loop, what is if condition, that also we'll see in the upcoming session, but just an example. So as I said, array has a length here. So array name dot length will give you the length of the array, and so on. Okay, now so far what we have seen are basically called as one dimensional array. So you have an array and there are some certain elements, that's it. So if you see, there are multiple dimensions of array, for example rows and column. So how do you declare a two-dimensional array? So you have two square brackets here, that is how you say it's a two-dimensional array. So basically it is called as row into column. Okay, so if you see, there are three rows here and four columns. So let's say if you take an image has multiple pixels, so it has some rows and some columns. Okay, so that is how you can represent it. So remember one more thing. So a 2D array is a collection of multiple one-dimensional array. So if you see here, it is a one-dimensional array. If you see here, it is a one-dimensional array. So collection of multiple one-dimensional array will become two-dimensional array, and so on. So obviously when you have two dimensions and if you want to access the individual elements of the array, you need to provide two index. One is the row index, one is the column index. So once again here, the any index will always start from 0. So row index and column index. So in this example, what we are doing is we are printing the entire two-dimensional array. So how do you print the array? How do you print a two-dimensional array? You go row by row. So every row you do an iteration for every row, and then you access every column. So you have something called as outer for loop, you have something called as inner for loop. So if you see pixel value dot length will give you number of rows, and pixel value of uh, 0 or 1 or 2 will give you the length of individual row. Okay, so you iterate number of rows and you iterate number of columns. So this is basically outer loop is for row and inner loop is for column. Okay, and you give the two indexes here. Okay, let's just run this. Right, so if you see here, if you just print something like this, it will give you the address of the array, and this will give you individual element and so on. Now this is an example of how you can access a two-dimensional array. How do you print it? Using multiple for loops. Right, so let's see some questions here. So is this a correct statement? In square brackets it is equal to new int. So as we have seen uh, in the earlier example, whenever you declare an array, you should initialize it. So this is basically an initialization, but it is not full initialization. So whenever you declare an array, you need to tell to the underlying JVM that this array will contain, let's say, X elements. So you need to initialize it with some value, and that is how it becomes a complete array. So this statement is not correct. You need to initialize it. So what happens if you access an element with incorrect index? So we have seen that if the index is, let's say, which does not exist, so you have 4 elements and you're accessing, let's say, ninth element, or if you are accessing any negative element, so that is not correct, so you will get an exception. Okay, is it possible to create an array of integer and string both, and how? So remember what we have seen, an array is a collection of similar data type. So we cannot have an array of integer and string both. Okay, so let's see this first, this execution. So if I try to access, let's say if I'm trying to access -1. Okay, so let's see if I run it. So the index is -1 here, and -1 it is not allowed, so it will throw an exception. The exception is called as array index out of bound exception. You can call it as an error also. Right, and so array of integer and string. So if you see this, I'll give you this example. So I want in this example array of string and integer both, so that is not allowed because you need to have only similar type of elements. Okay, some people can also say that, let's say this is a string array, so instead of this I will put some number here. So remember, whenever you put anything inside double quotes, it becomes a string. Okay, though technically if you see 111, it is a number, but then when you put it inside uh, double quotes, it becomes a string. So array of multiple type in the same array of multiple type is not allowed. So that's it for this session. Let's continue with some other topics in the next session. Thank you.